what can we explain about exactly what happened with Brian Flores and the Giants?
So there are some things that line up. The timeline that he outlines in the lawsuit and what the Giants have actually said to some extent publicly about their process with Brian Flores, that they reached out to him prior to the hiring of their general manager, Joe Schoen, to assure him that they had interest in him and he would get an interview for the job. There was a January 18th Zoom call that involved John Mara, the Giants co-owner, and Brian Flores to talk about this issue even before they named Schoen the general manager. And then after they named Schoen the general manager, they scheduled an interview with him. Of course, once that interview was scheduled, that's when the text exchange happened with Bill Belichick, and then Flores, in the lawsuit, claims that he went to the interview with the Giants 3 days later, knowing that someone else had already gotten the job. The Giants, in their statement, claim that Flores was a candidate for the job until, quote, the 11th hour, and that their process, they believe, was fair and thorough. So basically, they're coming out and saying he's wrong, that it wasn't a sham interview, that he really was a candidate, and that it basically came down to him or Brian Daboll, and Daboll ended up getting the job. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how it lays out in terms of the lawsuit and the Giants' response to it. Obviously, there are some inconsistencies in the two stories, and that's where the thing will ultimately be decided.
The first words of the Giants statement are, "We are pleased and confident with the process that resulted in the hiring of Brian Daboll." So that's what happened with the Giants. Let's jump then to the Denver Broncos, which is another team that Brian Flores interviewed for a job for some years ago, before he was hired in Miami. Go through what he claims happened there.
So in 2019, when the Denver Broncos interviewed Brian Flores for their head coach job, the lawsuit alleges that the Broncos officials showed up an hour late, that they appeared to have been affected by being out drinking the night before, and that they didn't take the interview seriously. The lawsuit says the content of the interview shows that he wasn't a serious candidate for the job. Of course, the Broncos released a statement last night saying this is not true, that the interview began promptly at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time in Providence, Rhode Island, that 5 team executives were there, and that they have detailed notes on the meeting showing that he was indeed a serious candidate. So once again, yes, an issue of where Flores seems to have felt differently about how the interview went than the team claims it went. Broncos ended up hiring Vic Fangio as their head coach, who was just fired a couple of weeks ago and replaced with Nathaniel Hackett from the Green Bay Packers.
And it is worth making sure the audience is aware as well, Dan, that as this is happening, Brian Flores is currently a candidate for 2 vacant coaching jobs, yes?
Correct. Yes, he interviewed with the New Orleans Saints yesterday, my understanding, in Mobile, Alabama, where much of the league is gathered for the Senior Bowl this week. He's also a finalist, as we understand it, for the Houston Texans job, along with 3 other candidates. So, yes, technically he is still a candidate for a couple of other jobs. Of course, a lot of speculation around the league last night that this would affect filing a lawsuit in which every NFL team is named as a defendant, that would affect his chances of getting those jobs. And Brian Flores acknowledged as much in the statement he put out last night, saying he knew he was putting his future as a head coach at risk by filing this lawsuit. But as you heard in the clip there, he feels like bigger issues are at stake.
All right, Dan, well done. Stay close. We'll come back to you with more. I want to bring some of the guys in here. And I'll start with Dominique and Jeff Saturday, fellas, because you have I want to set up that you have extensive experience, not only as NFL players, but in negotiating directly with NFL owners. The two of you comprise the players' leadership during the work stoppage that took place now a decade ago, and so have a lengthy experience in dealing directly with the owners here. I think it's relevant as we discuss this. That said, Dominique, as you hear all of this and you go through the lawsuit and everything as we've heard from Brian Flores, what's your primary takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, given that context that you've given and hearing Brian Flores in that clip say that he's hoping to change some of their hearts and minds, like maybe I'm just a cynical old black man, but I don't see that being the result of any of this. But I do think that it's possible that he can affect some change, but not him alone. The most important thing out of this to me is that other coaches need to opt in. And they're going to put their careers on the line also. But the more of them do it, I think the safer that they are. And also the more credible the claims appear to be. So I kind of known that. I mean, we all know. We've seen this 100 times over, where when one person steps up and starts to be a representative for an entire group, then that person is attacked and discredited. Their claims can be undercut, and then it seems as if the issue never mattered. So I think it's important that coaches gather around Brian Flores and not make him the lone martyr. And it's not just black coaches. I think black coaches and executives should opt in to this class action suit to add their stories also, because I know Jeff knows a ton of stories. I've heard a ton of stories. If you are one person removed from the NFL and you know a black coach, you know a story about how they felt like they have been mistreated. But I also think that the white coaches and executives should stand up for this also. While they may not opt into the class, they should understand and see what's happening and support Brian Flores and hope that we get to a place where we can force the hands of the NFL owners, because changing them, making them think differently, to me feels like a pipe dream.
It is also worth pointing out for anyone who's not aware that unlike the players, the coaches don't have a union. They don't have a collective body with which to negotiate in something like this, and that does leave Flores, at least for the moment, somewhat on an island. Jeff Saturday, I'll bring you in here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think what Fox said is perfect. I mean, the reality of the situation is this isn't the NFL. Like, people are going to question Roger Goodell. They're going to question Troy Vincent. What's going on? These aren't hiring practices that these guys have neglected. They have tried to they built pipelines for black coaches and people of color to take these roles and move forward, whether it be in management, whether it be on the field. This is an owner issue. I mean, this is you. The owners ultimately make this decision. And when you think about how disingenuous this interview was, if what Brian Flores is saying, it should upset you. It should piss you off. I mean, the reality of this situation, this is a good football coach, and by anybody that I've spoken to in general, it's a really good man. And for him to put his entire career on the line, and he is putting his career on the line, by the way.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.